All right, so have you heard about this brawl that happened in this Chinese restaurant?
Oh, yeah, I think I saw something about this.
Yeah, I mean, uh, brawl in a restaurant that's not that out of the ordinary, right? But
Yeah.
this is like being compared to classic literature.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, it's like pretty crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're gonna deep dive into this whole thing today. It happened at this Haidilao restaurant in Changsha, China, and it involves this female celebrity named Jiang Yan.
Okay.
And this is all coming from this article called Pasted Text. And yeah, so apparently she was just like eating, at the restaurant, and this guy starts like insulting her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Just out of the blue.
Yeah, and it gets like really heated, and like, oh, and the article says that he like claims to be this famous lawyer from Hong Kong.
Oh, geez.
So it's like, it's already a kind of like a bizarre situation.
Yeah.
And then it escalates like even more, and there's all this like video footage all over Weibo, the Chinese social media platform.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows like Jiang actually like mounting this guy, like he's already on the ground, and she's like hitting him repeatedly.
Whoa.
And so like people are pulling him apart, and it's just this whole chaotic scene, right? But here's the thing.
Yeah.
The online reaction has been like really divided.
I bet.
Yeah, like obviously some people are like condemning the violence, right?
Of course.
But there's this whole other group of people, and they're like comparing it to this scene from Water Margin.
Water Margin, like the classic Chinese novel.
Yeah, exactly. I know, right?
Right.
It's like what? So, like for people who maybe haven't read Water Margin, can you give us a little bit of background on that?
Sure, yeah. So Water Margin, it's one of the four great classical novels of Chinese literature.
Okay.
So, it's been like super influential for centuries, and it's really deeply ingrained in Chinese culture. And it's basically, it's this epic tale of these 108 outlaws who kind of like band together. Yeah, and they're like fighting against corruption and injustice in their society, and it's full of all these like really vivid characters and like epic battle scenes and stuff like that.
It sounds really cool.
Oh yeah, it's a great book, and so it's like still really popular today. Like people reference it all the time in like everyday conversation and stuff.
Huh. So what's the connection with this restaurant brawl?
Right. So there's this specific scene in Water Margin that people are like pointing to, and it involves this character named Wu Song.
Okay.
And he's like one of the most popular heroes in the book. And in this scene, he like gets into this fight with a tiger.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like a real tiger. He's like walking through this forest, and this tiger like jumps out and attacks him.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. And so Wusong ends up like wrestling this tiger to the ground and like beating it to death with his bare hands.
Oh, my gosh. That's intense.
Oh, yeah. It's like super intense. And it's become like this really iconic scene in Chinese culture. Like, it represents like strength and courage and like standing up to like even the most like powerful, like ferocious opponent.
Wow. Okay. I can kind of see the comparison now.
Yeah, so, people are seeing Jiang Yan, like, in that same light. She's like the modern-day Wusong, right? Like, standing up to this guy who was, like, verbally abusing her, and they're, like, celebrating her for, like, her courage and her, like, willingness to fight back.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially in the context of Water Margin.
Exactly. And, you have to remember that Water Margin, it's not just like a story about fighting, it's like a story about like rebellion and like resistance against like oppressive forces.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So when people compare Jiang to Wusong, it's not like they're necessarily like condoning violence. They're like tapping into this much deeper cultural idea of like fighting for what's right and like standing up to bullies.
Yeah. And it makes you think about like, the power of these cultural stories and how they kind of like shape our understanding of the world.
Absolutely. It's like we have these narratives that are passed down through generations, and they like provide us with these frameworks for like understanding our own experiences and like making sense of the world around us.
And in this case, it's interesting because like this whole thing is playing out on social media.
Right.
It's like this really public spectacle.
Yeah.
And it's like being amplified and reinterpreted through the lens of Water Margin.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you have to consider like the role of social media in all this too, right? Because like these days, any event can go viral in like an instant, and it can get like picked apart and analyzed and like reinterpreted by like millions of people. And so you have to wonder, like, is Jiang being hailed as a hero because people genuinely like support her actions, or is it because like her actions fit into this like pre-existing narrative that, we've inherited from Water Margin? It's like, what does this say about how we process complex events,
Yeah.
in a world that's just like totally saturated with information.
Right. It's like we're constantly bombarded with like news and images and videos.
Yeah.
And it can be really hard to sort of like sift through all of that and figure out like what's really going on and like what it all means.
Exactly.
Like, in this case, it's like this brawl in a restaurant becomes this like metaphor for like bigger social and cultural issues.
Yeah.
And it's like raising all these questions about like gender dynamics and violence and like the role of social media in shaping public opinion.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
Yeah. So like after the brawl, Jiang actually went on Weibo herself.
Oh.
Yeah, and she like slammed the guy for like mocking people from Hunan, where she's from. And then she also posted these videos condemning her own actions and urging people to stop sharing the videos of the fight.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
I know, right? It's like, talk about a roller coaster of emotions. Like she's like angry and defiant, but then she's also like remorseful and trying to like control the narrative.
Yeah, it just shows you how complicated these situations are and like how there's always like multiple perspectives and like everybody's got their own story.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, this whole incident, it really highlights like the power of cultural narratives and how they can shape our understanding of like real life events. Like we've been talking about water margin, but I'm sure you could find similar examples in like other cultures too. Like could you imagine a brawl in a New York City diner being compared to like a scene from Shakespeare or something?
Totally. And like think about all those like epic fight scenes in Greek mythology. Like could you imagine a similar incident being like reframed through like the lens of the Odyssey or something?
Right. It's like these stories, they offer us these ways of understanding like human behavior and conflict, and they can be really powerful.
Yeah, and it really makes you think about like, how much of our perception of reality is shaped by the stories that we tell ourselves and each other.
Yeah.
It's like what's real and what's just a story.
Right.
And like how do those stories influence the way that we interact with the world around us? It's pretty deep stuff.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
It's definitely food for thought.
All right. Well, on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up for today.
Okay.
This has been a really fascinating deep dive, I got to say.
It really has.
So until next time, keep those brain juices flowing, and we'll catch you later.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.